on a very warm day, and the Lord has blessed us with. Thank you for the sunshine. Just remember in January, these days are possible, all right? So soak in the sun, enjoy the heat, and we'll look forward to letting that emit out of us over the winter time. Just a few announcements to be aware of upcoming seniors. We're looking forward to having you at our house on Friday. So if you haven't signed up already, please sign up. Looking forward to our garden fellowship, 11 a.m., and we'll look forward to that time together. And bring along a lawn chair. If you have one or an extra, bring along that. We will be seated outside, Lord willing, weather, it should be warm and sunny, but weather dependent, so looking forward to that on Friday. Then Friday evening, church softball, so come on over to the Irishtown Community Center. We're looking forward to having softball again, 7 to 8:30. Saturday teens, there is a split activity, so come to the church at 10, and then Sierra will take the ladies, Pastor Josiah will take the gentlemen, and life jackets are involved, apparently. If you can't swim, bring a life jacket. All right, and he'll bring them back all alive, but we'll look forward to that. And then upcoming, be aware of Fellowship Sunday, so not this Sunday, but next is our Fellowship Sunday as we're doing throughout the summer, and so no evening service, inviting somebody over to your house and enjoying the afternoon of fellowship. I really enjoyed our time with a couple of families we had over last Sunday in July, and look forward to doing it again upcoming. So looking forward to that. Also, Paul's Missionary Journeys, a number have already signed up for that, but if you are interested in joining us for the tour next spring, May 18th to the 28th, we'll be doing Paul's Missionary Journeys, 5 days in Greece and then 4 days on the boat, through the Greek Isles, tracing Paul's missionary journey. So if you want to sign up for that, if you're interested. All right, that's all the time we take for announcements this evening. Pastor Josiah is going to come and lead us in our song.
This evening we'll be singing 371, A Passion for Thee. Number 371, A Passion for Thee.
My vocation
All right, Psalm 48 tonight. Psalm 48, we're covering the book of Psalms, and I've kind of slowed down here. We did 46, 47, and now we're doing 48. Psalm 48. We're going to read it through and to get you ready. You're going to have some questions that you have to answer, so Bible study format. This psalm is a psalm of the sons of Korah, and so again, it's one of the worship psalms, one of the praise psalms that they wrote and would have sung. And it is a walking tour of the city of Jerusalem. This is where they lived, this is where they worshiped, of course, where the temple was. And so we're going to take a little walking tour of Jerusalem. And as we read through this, I want you to try to pick up on this a couple of questions. What parts of the city of Jerusalem, what characteristics of the city of Jerusalem are highlighted as we walk through this? The sons of Korah are picking up. And then, what does it tell us about God? So the architecture of the city of Jerusalem, as we're walking around and seeing certain aspects of it from the sons of Korah perspective, what does it tell us about God? What is it that they're highlighting about God's character? And then we'll apply it to ourselves at the end. Psalm 48, great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in his holy mountain. Beautiful in elevation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is in her palaces, he is known as her refuge. For behold, the kings assembled, they passed by together, they saw it, and so they marveled, they were troubled, they hastened away. Fear took hold of them there, and pain as of a woman in birth pangs, and when you break the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. As we have heard, so we have seen, in the city of the Lord of hosts, and the city of our God, God will establish it forever. We have thought, O God, on your loving kindness in the midst of your temple. According to your name, O God, so is your praise to the ends of the earth. Your right hand is full of righteousness, let Mount Zion rejoice, let the daughters of Judah be glad because of your judgments. Walk about Zion and go all around her. Count her towers. Mark well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces, that you may tell it to the generation following. For this is God, our God forever and ever. He will be our guide, even to death. And so the encouragement is to walk about Zion, to walk around the city of Jerusalem, and to look at certain of its features. So what I'm going to do tonight to start with is show you a few pictures, and hopefully that'll help us to walk about Zion a little bit. The first one is this is Jerusalem in the Roman era, in the time of Christ, and so you'll notice the prominence of the temple. That's the rectangular structure that's most prominent in the model. You'll also know the topography to the east of the temple, that rectangular structure, is the Mount of Olives. All right? The Kidron Valley runs down in between Mount Zion, what Mount Moriah, later becoming known as Mount Zion, that hilltop, and the hilltop to the east is Mount of Olives. To the west and north really, is Mount Scopus, and Jerusalem is sitting in the middle of these undulations in the mountain range in Judea. And so the city of David descends from the temple down to the south, as the Kidron Valley runs down to the south. The very bottom end is the Pool of Siloam. And so the ancient city of David was just a little piece of running from the temple down to that bottom corner in the southern corner. In the Romans' day, in Jesus' day, of course, it was expanded, and Herod's palace on the very far in my left, I don't know if that's your left as well, but you can see another rectangular structure in the model, and that's Herod's palace on that side of the city, right by the Joppa gate, and that's where Jesus was taken from Pilate over to Herod and then back to Pilate. And so this is the Roman Jerusalem, all right? Here's another model of it. This is from the Israeli Museum. They have a second temple model rebuilt there. And the picture is taken as if I were standing on top of the Mount of Olives and looking down over the city of Jerusalem. And so you'll see the eastern gate there very prominently on the Temple Mount. You have the retaining wall around the temple, and you can see the eastern gate in its prominence. And then flowing down to the left of that, to the south, if you're looking directionally, is the city of David. And so David's city was descending down the mount, and to the north of it is all of the Roman city, and west of it is all the Roman city. The third picture is a modern day, just a picture that I took from the Mount of Olives, looking across the Kidron Valley to the eastern gate and the eastern wall of the retaining wall of the temple grounds. Of course, the Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are now sitting where the temple would have been in Jesus' day, and then the modern city of Jerusalem is ascending up the mountains. And so the city of Jerusalem is a city that is sitting on mountains. It's in the Judean hills, and it really doesn't have any of the typical topological features that successful ancient cities had. What was the first thing that every ancient city looked for? If you're going to build a city, what was the first thing you looked for? Water. That's why a lot of ancient cities were built on rivers, all right? And so Babylon, sitting on a river. Nineveh, sitting on a river, all right? Pretty big ones. Tigris, Euphrates. And so major cities were built on water because you needed the source of water to live, to survive. Water is life. And so most cities were built on rivers or potentially lakes, but not Jerusalem. In fact, Jerusalem always struggled with water. They had one source, which was the Gihon Spring, and Hezekiah builds a tunnel to bring that inside of the walls when the Assyrians are coming to invade because he knows the precious nature of water. This is how we looked at Sunday night. How did David conquer Jerusalem? Up the water shaft, all right? It was the one point of weakness in this Jebusite city. So Jerusalem did not have the natural advantage of having water. It had no strategic trade routes. No caravan of traders goes through mountains. They don't want to carry all their burdens all the way through the mountain ranges. And so, to the east of Jerusalem, you have the King's Highway. And you would come up out of Egypt, and you would go to the east of the Jordan, where modern-day Jordan is, and then you would head into the Fertile Crescent called the King's Highway. Or you would take the Via Maris, the way of the sea, and you would go to the west, up through Caesarea, and then through the pass at Megiddo, and up into the Fertile Crescent there. You didn't go through Jerusalem. You didn't go through mountain ranges. You either stayed to the west in the coastal plains, or you went on the east where the other plains were. It just wasn't a strategic place to trade and go through. It also had no fertile plains. If you look at this picture, what's the main dominant thing you see? Rocks. Limestone. Now it's beautiful. When the sun is rising over Jerusalem and it's hitting all of that beautiful limestone, it is breathtaking. It is beautiful. When the sun is setting and when we go on tours there, we time it so that we're ascending up to Jerusalem just as the sun is setting over the Dome of the Rock and the beautiful limestone. It's very pretty. You can't eat limestone, all right? It's very challenging to chew on the rocks, all right? And so typically cities would have fertile places where they could grow crops and they could produce, but not Jerusalem. So, what does it have? What features are the sons of Korah rejoicing in that as they walk around Jerusalem and take you on a tour of Jerusalem, what is noted as significant? What are the features of the city that are highlighted? Okay? It's beauty, all right? It's beautiful in elevation. So why is it beautiful? What's the feature? What's that? Okay, God is there. We're going to get to that one for sure. Fortress, okay? So what aspects of a fortress are here? Walls, okay? Towers. The bulwarks are on the wall, all right? They're the ancient places where you would gather to shoot down your enemies, all right? And so the bulwarks are on the wall, but they're kind of the raised portion of the wall, what you would defend. The word for palaces, you'll notice in verse 3 as well as paralleled in verse number 13, palaces really is the sense of a fortified palace. It's not the idea of splendor or of wealth. When we think of palace, we think, ooh, rich people live in palaces. Here it's the idea of a citadel. It's the idea of a keep, of a place of a stronghold, okay? And so it's not the palace. He's not highlighting the palace in the sense that, oh, it's so opulent and rich. He's highlighting, look at the towers, look at the bulwarks, look at the citadel, look at the place of refuge that you can go to. We know that because what is parallel in verse 3 in the synonymous parallel? God is in her palaces. He is known as her refuge, all right? So the palace is paralleled with refuge. What is highlighting the feature of the palace is that it's a refuge. And in ancient cities, you had the outer walls, and sometimes you had a moat and so on as defensive structures, but you would have the keep, you would have the citadel as your most central place of defense. And if they breached the outer wall, you went to the inner wall. If they breached the inner wall, you went to the citadel. That's where you kind of made your last stand. And it was fortified, and it was a place of refuge. And so clearly security is one of the things, the safety, the security of Jerusalem, the defense nature of it, how it's filled with walls, surrounded, it has towers, it has bulwarks. God is a refuge there, is certainly highlighted. And so I termed this security. that this city, as you walk around, is a secure place because it is set in the hills. God is her refuge. There's a place of security here. And what happens in verse 4 and 5 when kings, that is the outside enemies, come to attack this city? What happens to them? Okay, so they see it. So you're marching along, okay, we're taking Laish, and we're taking, Megiddo, we're taking all these cities, and then we come to Jerusalem. And the kings march up. You can think of the Assyrians or whatever armies coming. They march up, and then they see Jerusalem. The picture is they see on the mountain, on the hill, and even David, looking at the Jebusite city, was a very challenging place to actually attack because they said the blind and the lame can repel you. I mean, we don't even have to defend this place because it's so secure. It's just, it has walls and towers, and it's on a mountain. I mean, how are you going to scale up to defeat them? And so kings pass by. They see it, they marvel, they're so troubled by what they see in terms of the towers and bulwarks and walls that they leave. They hasten away. And in verse 6, poetically, the sons of Korah talk about their enemies and the fear that takes hold of them. There are two pictures they use. What's the first picture they use of fear that happens to them? A woman in birth pangs. All right, mums. What's this reality? And how does it connect to fear? Okay. Well, I think there's a couple ways. One is the suddenness. All right. And so it takes a hold of them suddenly. You are going along your day and your pregnancy, and all of a sudden labor comes on. All right. And it is a sudden reality. It comes upon you. All right. Some ladies have very sudden labor, and the water breaks, and all of a sudden, a baby's coming. It's a sudden event, all right? It's also, I've been told and witnessed, very painful, all right? It is a sudden gripping thing. It's not something you can ignore. You stub your toe, well, you can try to ignore that. Don't do well with that either. There are certain things you can kind of ignore. When labor comes upon you, it is sudden, it is painful, it is unable to be ignored. And so fear grabs a hold of them in a sudden way that is so obvious that they cannot ignore it. They come against this city, and it's just this sudden, painful fear. What's the other picture? Okay, so Tarshish, that's an interesting word. Try to say it 5 times fast. Tarshish. Kind of a funny word. Where do we know Tarshish from? Jonah, all right. He was trying to flee to Tarshish, all right. This is a city that is in the western part of the Mediterranean Sea. Most scholars believe it is in Spain, what would be modern-day Spain, all right. We know a number of places in Scripture where there was trading going on between Tarshish and Israel. And so Solomon traded, and he brought home all kinds of things from Tarshish. If you go to 1 Kings chapter 10, you'll find, this is one of those verses I enjoy when I talk about, Solomon's wealth and kind of what he did. But 1 Kings chapter 10 and verse 22, it says, "For the king had merchant ships at sea with a fleet of Hiram. Once every 3 years the merchant ships came, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and monkeys. So King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom." And so Solomon would send out these ships, and they would send them all over the Mediterranean, and they would bring home all of these riches to him. And one of the places that they would go would be to Tarshish. It was a place that they would go to. You can look at Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 9. It mentions Tarshish as a place that they would do trading with and bringing home goods. And so the ships of Tarshish were kind of famous, merchant ships. It was known to be something that they brought with them. And a severe east wind comes up and breaks those ships. You're out on the sea, and all of a sudden the contrary wind, the eastern wind comes. It's sudden, it's unavoidable, you cannot ignore it, and it's painful. It breaks up your ship. And so perhaps one for the ladies, birth pangs, one for the men, breaking up your ship at sea. Both categories now understand what he's talking about. The enemies march up to Jerusalem, confident, full of bravado. We're going to take on this city. And they suddenly and unavoidably get captured by fear and run the other way. It is so secure. And so there's a security here. Okay. What else? We kind of skipped over it a little bit in verse number 2 and in verse number 1. What is the other feature So security, absolutely. What is a feature here? Verse 1 and 2. Is that? Okay, a mountain, beautiful in elevation. Okay, so it is the characteristic or the feature of being high, height. Okay, it's lifted up. It's a place of being lifted up. It's a holy mountain, the city of our God. God's name is placed not in the lowlands, not in the valley. It's placed up on a mountain, in a holy mountain, a holy place in Mount Zion on the sides of the north. Mount Zion is mentioned a number of times, verse number 11 and verse number 2, that God has placed his name in a high place on a mountain. Okay? And the idea of, in verse 2, the parallel, the beautiful elevation, the joy of the whole earth, the ascension up to this high place to come to worship God, to have to walk up to go up to Jerusalem and to come up on these. And Pastor Sai has done a number of these songs of ascent. Well, why are they songs of ascent? Because you had to ascend up to Jerusalem. You had to walk up to Jerusalem. And so this is the idea of great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of God in his holy mountain, in the high hills, the high place. All right, so it's high, it's secure. Verse 9 and 10, what is the other feature that he takes you on the walking tour of Jerusalem? What is the third feature? The temple. He wants you to see the temple, all right? And so he mentions, of course, the temple. And this is the central meat of the psalm, paralleling in both the first half and the latter half, the reality of security, of walls, of tower, of height, and so on. In the middle, he references, we have thought, O God, in your loving kindness, in the midst of your temple. And in the center of the city, at the very highest place, up on the hill, behind the palace of David and then Solomon, up on the hill is the temple. It's a prominent reality. You can't miss it. Even today, when you see the retaining walls all around Jerusalem, you go into Jerusalem, it's the first thing you see. It's just this massive, prominent thing. And so, in the midst of your temple, as we walk through Mount Zion, you can't miss it. You see the temple. And here's a place of worship. Jerusalem's not just a military place and not just a place of defense, not just a place of security and height, but it's a place of worship. It's a place where we go to worship our God. And come see the temple and what goes on there. And so those three realities, height, security, and the temple, are mentioned as we walk about Zion and see and go on the walking tour. Now, what do they teach us about God? Why highlight these realities that we're walking around Jerusalem and seeing all these things, and they're saying, hey, look at the city of our God, and see these things. What do they teach us about God? So first of all, in the height, what does that teach us about God in verse 1 to 3? What is it teaching us about God? He is great. He is a great king. It's a city of the great king. He's the high and holy one. He's lifted up. His name is on this place that is a holy mountain. And so he is holy. He is other, transcendent. He is majestic. He's glorious. He is high and lifted up. And the sons of Korah are rejoicing that in this place of height and elevation that God is ruling here. His name is here because God himself is a great king. And he is in her palaces. And then what does the security teach us about God? Marking her bulwarks, considering her palaces, telling it to the next generation. What does that communicate about God? Where is their security actually found in verse number 3? It's God. It's not just the walls. It's not just the towers and the bulwarks. He's saying those are just the picture of how secure this city is because God is here. God is her refuge. He is known in verse 3 as her refuge. You'll notice, according to your name, O God, in the city of the Lord of hosts in verse 8, in the city of our God, God will establish it forever. It's not just the fact that they have nice walls, bulwarks, and towers. The psalmist wants you to praise and worship Jerusalem, to see Jerusalem, to say, this is so secure because God is here. And he brings this security to them so that their enemies fear. As we have heard, so we have seen. As we have heard about this God and this city, and now we've seen it, this is the city of the Lord of hosts. This is God's place. And he will defend it. God, in verse 8, will establish it how long? Forever. It's so secure because God is going to establish it forever. And then in verse 14, for this is God. Walk around, see all the city and the features of the city, and it tells you something about God. God is the security here, and how long is he going to reign in verse 14? Forever. He's going to be our guide even to death. I mean, even to the end. And so there's this sense of security and the prominence of that because God's presence is here and because God's permanence is here. Because he is forever, he's going to establish it forever, it's his city. And so it teaches us about the security we find in God and his presence. We don't trust in horses and chariots, we don't trust in our walls and our towers, we trust in the Lord, we trust in him. Finally, in the temple, what does the temple feature teach us about God? In verse 9 and 10, there are two characteristics of God that are on display at the temple. Your loving kindness, chesed in the Hebrew, it's all throughout the Old Testament. It is the covenant loyalty of God. It's his faithfulness and goodness. It's what we translate for your mercy endures forever. It's that same term. It's such a diamond, that word. It has so many different aspects to it. But it's God's loving kindness, his mercy. Now, how do you see the mercy of God, the loving kindness of God, the faithful, steadfast covenant of God in the temple? Okay. His presence actually comes to dwell with his people. God has set his name and his affection, and he's saying, these are my people. Of all the nations of the earth, these are mine, and my presence is here. And the temple is where you go to see that. You can't get in. You can't go beyond the veil. But you know God's here in a unique way. His presence is here. And this establishes his loving kindness. He has made his presence known. It's one of God's great mercies that he would dwell with us. Because we are so sinful, we are so undeserving of that, and his mercy is what enables his covenant faithfulness for his presence to dwell. It's why he had the tabernacle established, so as a holy God, he could still be there with his people, even though they were sinful and they had to have prescribed sacrifices. And so the loving kindness of God and his presence with his people is seen at the temple. If you go to the temple, the sons of Korah are worshiping God, saying, we have thought, O God, on your loving kindness in the midst of your temple. When we come to this place in Jerusalem, we walk around, we see the walls and towers and all that, but when we come to the temple, we just think about your loving kindness. We think about your presence and your mercy and how good you are. All right, what else do they think about? His righteousness and his judgments. Why would the temple make you think of God's righteousness? Okay, and so you know there's a veil here. It's a holy place. I can't go in there. There is as much as there's a presence, there's also a separation, and then there's blood-stained limestone everywhere. You think about the amount of sacrifices every day, every morning, every evening, all the sacrifices every day, and the blood running out that eastern gate, all the blood that ran from those sacrifices on that altar. I mean, you couldn't help but walk into the place and know there's sacrifice here because God demands righteousness. God demands justice, and sin has to be punished. And so we come and we dwell on the fact that you have your presence here, but the only reason your presence can be here is because those sacrifices are happening every morning and every evening. And on the Day of Atonement, we have a scapegoat, and we have a goat that's blood is sprinkled on the mercy seat inside. That's the only reason your presence can stay here. It's because of the blood that is shed, because you're righteous and you have judgments. And your name is here, but your name is only here because of all of this blood that is being shed. And so as we enter into the temple, you can't but help hear the bleating of the sheep and the bulls and the goats. You can't but help see the slitting of throats and blood and sprinkling of it. You can't help but see all of that. And it's not the glittering gold and all of the realities of that is beautiful and it's holy and it's majestic, but it's also very bloody. And God expects justice, and sin does not go unpunished. And you just see it over and over and over again. And so your right hand it's just full of righteousness. And the daughters of Judah can be glad because of your judgments. So on our walking tour of Jerusalem, we see God as a holy and righteous God, but also as a merciful and loving God. So the tour of Jerusalem is a tour of God. On his high and holy mountain is this glorious great king who brings such great security. His presence is here and his permanence is here. He's established this place, and he's a holy and good God. He's righteous and just, but he's loving. He's provided a way for a holy God to be able to meet with his people. God is the evident architect of the city, and the tour is to point you to his glory. It's to point you to him. And so, how do we apply this psalm? We don't go to Jerusalem. Well, I've been to Jerusalem, but we don't normally go to Jerusalem today and walk around and look at these things. In fact, God's presence left Jerusalem. If you read Ezekiel's by the river Chebar, and God takes him back to Jerusalem, and God shows him on purpose. He lifts his glory. He saw the glory in Ezekiel chapter 1, and all the wheel within the wheel, and the eyes, all of that, the cherubim. Why does God show? He said, this is my presence. This is my glorious presence. And he takes him back to Jerusalem, and he lifts it off of the temple. He lifts it out of the holy place, and he moves it to the eastern gate, and Ezekiel watches the glory of God leave the city of Jerusalem, leave the temple, and go over the eastern mountains. God says, I'm out of here. I'm done. The sins of these people. He takes Ezekiel on a tour of the temple, and he shows them they're worshiping Tammuz. They're worshiping all these false gods. He just opens up the cupboards and all the places of the side chambers. You read that in the book of Ezekiel. It's just disgusting what's going on in the temple of God. And God's presence leaves. His name and his presence is no longer there. It's interesting that when they built the second temple, there was no return of the glory of God like the first temple. There was no cloud filling the Holy of Holies. There was no monumental reality like that. When does the glory of God appear back on earth? When Jesus shows up. Glory to God in the highest, and earth peace, goodwill to men. Here's a child born. And here's God come back to earth, and his presence is now in this person, Christ. And then Christ goes and offers himself as a sacrifice for our sins in this city of Jerusalem. And all those lambs and all those goats are now on display in this one perfect sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And then he ascends back to the Father, and he tells us that it's expedient that I go away. Why? Because when I go away, I'm going to send you the Comforter. I'm going to send you the Spirit of God who's going to be in you. And so in 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20, Paul just is amazed that they don't know this. What? Know you not? Do you not know that your body is what? You're the temple. You're the temple of God. You are the representation of God. 2 Corinthians 5:20, Paul says, we are ambassadors for Christ. We are representing Christ to this world. And so I want to challenge us from Psalm 48 that we are to be the living testimony of who God is. We're to demonstrate to the world his glory and his security and his gospel. How is the world going to know our God? Well, it's through our testimony of God's height, his glory, his supremacy. Do people watching your life know how great God is? Do they know of his supremacy and his glory? If they took a walking tour of your life Monday to Saturday and even on Sunday, would they say, wow, God is so good. He's great. He's exalted. What about God's power? Are you secure in him? Is he your bulwark and your tower? Is his presence enough? You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Are we fearful and anxious? What kind of God are we displaying to people when we are fearful and anxious? It's not a very powerful one. It's not a very secure one. We should be displaying the power and security of God. And then what kind of gospel are we displaying? Do we display the loving kindness of God and how we interact with the world around us? Would people know about God's love through your love for them? What kind of love do they think God has? And would people know about God's truth and his righteousness and his justice through your life, your testimony? And so I think the application for us is we're now the temple. We're the display. We're the model. And we're supposed to reflect Christ. And so as you take a walking tour of your own life, say, what kind of God am I displaying to the world? Is it a great king? Is it a powerful, secure king? Is it a God who is loving kindness and righteousness and justice? The gospel is to be on display in the loving kindness of God to save a sinner such as us in our lives Mercy and truth are to meet together. Righteousness and peace are to kiss each other in our lives, displaying that for us. And so, what does our life teach others about God? How are you a Psalm 48? And as they take a walking tour, what do they know about God? Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for its challenge. Thank you for its encouragement. Thank you for your character. You're worthy to be worshiped. You're worthy to be praised. In your city of Jerusalem, you were exalted for a time. But now, through the work of Christ, we are your ambassadors. We are your temple. And so, Lord, help us to display you accurately and faithfully to the world around us. Help us to evidence the security we can have in you. We are at peace and rest, not fearful and anxious. Help us to demonstrate loving kindness, not bitterness and wrath. Help us to demonstrate righteousness and justice and truth, not deception. God, help us to lift you up as high and holy in our world around us that desperately needs you. Help us to be faithful, we pray in Jesus' name.